Great. So good morning. It's morning. It's 5 o'clock here in Paris, where I'm currently am, and it's a great honor for me to join everyone. So, Professor Panu Mulyono, the FK-KMK, Professor Dr. Bambang Soendro, Your Excellency, Professor Dr. Sonarto. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for inviting me to present on UNESCO's work on global bioethics. It's a real honor to be amongst such distinguished speakers today. So my aim will be to give you a brief background information about what UNESCO does in the field of bioethics globally and also at the country level to better understand the importance of UNESCO chair within this overall structure. So I will share my screen with you. First, what I would like to do is give you an overview of the 3 different levels at which UNESCO works when it comes to bioethics. The first one is the global standard setting, elaboration of instruments, declarations, recommendations. Some of these were already mentioned today, such as the Universal Declaration on Bioethics and Human Rights, and I will keep referring back to it because it's one of the key declarations that we have in bioethics. But we constantly try to set global standards in the area of ethics of science and technology. For instance, right now, there's an intensive work going on at UNESCO on elaborating the recommendation on ethics of artificial intelligence, because artificial intelligence, as you know, is increasingly affecting every aspect of our lives, and it has serious ethical implications. So we're constantly trying to be at the forefront of this development, to anticipate what will be the areas that will challenge us ethically, and try to set global standards in these areas. The second tier that I would like to point out here is of course, the global reflection that is done by different committees. Again, we mentioned International Bioethics Committee, and of course, Professor Dr. Sonarto was a member of IBC, and we're very proud to, of course, have him as a former member. We also have COMES, that's the Committee on the Ethics of Science and Technology. And we also have different other interagency committees that basically, these are independent experts from around the world that come together to reflect on emerging ethical issues and to help to guide policymakers about how to address these complex and difficult issues. And at the third tier, we have the capacity building action at the national level. This is assisting bioethics committees. This is ethics education program. And there are also some specific projects that we have in terms of capacity building. For instance, recently in Indonesia, we did a project on haze pollution as a bioethical challenge. A very interesting approach to the issue. So these are the 3 quite interconnected of UNESCO's work in global bioethics. Now, I'll say a little bit about the Universal Declaration on Bioethics and Human Rights, and specifically an article on ethics committees. And I'm glad that colleagues before me actually mentioned the importance of the ethics committees, because this is also very much related to ethics education. So we at UNESCO believe and all the member states of UNESCO believe, because they all adopted this declaration, that independent, multidisciplinary, and pluralist ethics committees should be established and supported at the state level. They're extremely difficult. They're extremely important because they assess the relevant ethical, legal, and scientific developments. They provide advice on ethical problems. They assess the scientific and technological developments, and crucially, they foster debate, education, and public awareness of and engagement in bioethics. And so we have to do everything that we can to support, to revitalize, to reinforce the Bioethics Committee in Indonesia. And of course, UNESCO stands ready to do that, to work with the stakeholders in the country to support the National Bioethics Committee. The Declaration of Ethical Principles in relation to climate change has a very important article. It's article on scientific knowledge and integrity in decision-making. I don't need to stress how important it is today to be guided by science. And of course, unfortunately, the pandemic made it ever so clear. And unfortunately, we see that policymakers don't necessarily follow science. And in fact, in many cases, they go against what the science tells us. And the same is, of course, for climate change. And this declaration made it clear that following science is an ethical principle, ethical imperative in and of itself. And for that, again, the independent and pluralist ethics committees play a critical role, bringing the science to the policymakers and also bringing the science to the masses, to the people. And so therefore, UNESCO is really serious about focusing on ethics committees. And for that, we have developed different tools like Assisting Bioethics Committees project, where we have a structured interaction with the national bioethics committees, and we train them. We train together on different aspects. Here on the screen are some guidebooks that we have developed specifically for that purpose. Now, moving from there directly into the education area, we have a ethics education program at UNESCO. This is also linked directly to the Universal Declaration on Bioethics and Human Rights. Most of the things that we do in terms of capacity building is directly linked to this declaration. The reason for this is that the declaration represents a very solid ground from which to develop such projects, because every country that is member of UNESCO, I believe it was 195 countries back then when the declaration was adopted by all of them. So all of them have come to agree that these principles are universally valid. And these actions are universally required. And so that's why we use the declaration as the basis for all our action. So there's an article there that talks about bioethics education, training, and information. And based on that, we developed Bioethics Core Curriculum. Bioethics Core Curriculum takes the Universal Declaration on Bioethics and Human Rights as the basis, as a framework, recognizing, of course, that in every setting, in every cultural, national, religious, etc., diverse settings around the world, this will be a little bit different. The content will be a little bit different. And so the educators that are using the Bioethics Core Curriculum have the freedom to populate it with the content that is relevant to that particular setting. However, the principles and the values, of course, remain the same anywhere we go. And so that's the idea behind having such a curriculum. And I know that the curriculum has been used quite extensively in Indonesia, and we're happy to support use and continue working with our stakeholders. Now, one of the key stakeholders in this is, of course, a chair, UNESCO chair in bioethics. And I would like to here wholeheartedly congratulate Gajah Mada University for securing this status, having been granted the UNESCO chair in bioethics. This makes the university the first one in ASEAN, the Pacific region, the entire ASEAN, the Pacific region, to have a chair in bioethics, and we're very excited about that. Of course, this was done by UNESCO in recognition of the tremendous efforts made by the university and specifically by Bioethics Center in promoting bioethics education in the country. And we're really hoping to develop concrete partnership on different fronts on promoting ethics education in the country, also in the region, because we shouldn't necessarily be limited to the national level. We can also work at the regional level with the chair. Again, the Declaration of Ethics Principles in relation to climate change, this declaration, again, this was adopted by all the member states of UNESCO, which makes it a very, very interesting document. When around the world, there's a lot of disagreement about climate change and responsibilities for it and redress to what is happening. At UNESCO, countries managed to come together and agree on the basic ethical principles behind climate change. And there, again, we have Article 11 on education. While, of course, the major focus of the chair is in bioethics, ethics issues as they emerge in life sciences and biological sciences, we cannot detach this, of course, from the more general picture of what's happening in the world, what's happening with the climate. Climate change has some serious implications for human health, and therefore I think it's very important to look at it globally. On the next slide here, I'm indicating ethics teacher training course, which is one of the concrete areas where we have collaborated before with the chair. This is a 1-week capacity building course that UNESCO delivers together with partners in countries to enhance the quality of ethics teaching in the country. It's a very interactive course, very intensive one. And here you see the list of the courses that we have organized in ASEAN, the Pacific region. And we're very proud to have organized one in Yogyakarta at Gajah Mada University in 2018. We, of course, had similar plans this year. Unfortunately, they have been affected by the pandemic, but I'm sure that we'll find ways to hold such courses despite the pandemic, and hopefully once this pandemic is over, again in the regular setting, regular setting of a physical meeting, physical course. This brings me to the close of my presentation. I would like to once again thank you very much for inviting me to present about UNESCO's work in bioethics. I would like to also congratulate you once again for having attained the status of UNESCO chair in bioethics, and to express our readiness on UNESCO's behalf and on behalf of the entire Ethics of Science and Technology and Bioethics team at UNESCO, who asked me to send my greetings to you, to express our readiness to collaborate on capacity building and education in Indonesia and in the region. Thank you very much.